Jimmy Tarbuck through the 70s and 80s was the undisputed king of light entertainment on British television.
I don't know where he's going tonight.
His wife called him a lousy lover. How can she be a judge in 2 minutes?
Everyone has a skeleton or two in the cupboard, and I'm sure Jimmy Tarbuck has.
There's some incredible facts about Jimmy Tarbuck. He went to school with John Lennon.
Tommy Cooper!
He was there when Tommy Cooper lay dying behind the curtain and had to carry on the show. Jimmy Tarbuck is great friends with Tom Jones, Bruce Forsyth.
Did you get that? Did you get that?
Ronnie Corbett, Kenny Lynch. He's hung out with Sinatra, Elvis Presley. One thing's for sure tonight, we're going to get the best name-dropping life stories has ever had.
I am so up for this interview. I am ready to go, and he doesn't know this tonight, but I'm doing it from the toilet in my dressing room. I'm so nervous. They are.
Jimmy Tarbuck.
Piers Morgan.
I don't think anyone's come out to a bigger roar than you did.
Well, I've got 48 family there.
What is it about you think that the public just instantly find endearing?
I honestly don't know. With my hand on my heart, I don't know. It's, don't get me going. It's very touching. And people say, why do you do concerts? Well, it's the drug of the laughter and the people being so nice. It really is. It's a terrific feeling. Laughter is a terrific feeling.
Jimmy, you've performed for royalty many, many times over the years. When Charles and Camilla told you they'd been taken home in a police van after that famous incident where they were ambushed by rioters, you gave them some very sound advice.
He said, it was dreadful. He said, and they took me home in a police van. I said, you didn't give your real name and address, did you? He looked a bit bemused, and then he was speaking to the next people as he did the room. He went, real name and address, just laughed.
In the last 50 years, you've played the London Palladium over 700 times.
Yes.
How did you get asked to appear for the first time?
Well, I did a show up north called Comedy Bandbox, and it only went out in the north. And they said to Val Parnell, who was the boss of the Palladiums, there's a kid been on here, you want to see him? And he said, book him. And I was on the next weekend. I couldn't believe it. I'm on this club, it was headlines up north that I was going on. It was the Palladium. There was only BBC One and ATV. There was no other shows. And in those days, you got 20-odd million viewers. That night in '63 changed my life totally.
You got a little bit of a reputation early on, Jimmy. In fact, on that first show, you overran, apparently, by 3 minutes. At a Royal Variety Show, you've apparently turned a 6-minute slot into an 18-minute slot. There is a sense of, once you get that first laugh, there is no stopping him.
Well, what had happened, in my defence, the American comics had been on and just done whatever they wanted to do. So they came back, and I was on in front of Tom Jones, who was closing the show. They said, you've got to cut. I said, I certainly won't. I said, the Yanks have had a go. I'm going to have a go. Well, I went on, and I didn't realise I'd done so, and there was murder when I came off. You're going to get this. There was rollickings left, right and centre, and then it was time to meet the Queen. And she went, how many of these have you done now, Mr. Tarbuck? I said, 4 more than you. She said, it certainly seemed like it tonight.
Both comedians have a trademark or catchphrase. Tommy Cooper had his fez, of course. Ken Dodd, his tickling stick. You've always had the gap in your teeth.
Oh, yes.
This happened when you were like 6 or 7 at a swimming baths or something, right?
Well, there was a gap, because my mum had that, but I came up on the, you know, the bars that you hold at the side of the pool. I come up and hit my teeth, and the chip went out. And, well, I've just not had it fixed.
But is that because it became part of you?
Well, I suppose so.
Because you could afford to have it fixed if you wanted to.
On all the photos, I was never like that. It was always... and the gap showed, yeah.
And you've never been tempted to fill it in?
Why? That's why I've been never tempted to buy a wig. Why? Will it make me funnier? No.
I'm told that you can do a lot of very good impressions.
I can mimic mates.
Brucey's one of your favourites.
He has an Alsatian, and it barks like that. It goes...
One of your other great mates is Tom Jones.
Well, I call him the vampire. Count Dracula. He sleeps all day, and when the dusk comes down, he gets up. And when the light appears, he goes, "That's me, I'm off."
He can do his voice so well that you've played many a practical joke as Tom Jones.
Well, it wasn't a joke, but we were in Las Vegas, and Elvis decided to do an early show. And I said to Pauline, "You want to go and see Elvis? What about the show?" So we nip in between. So I phone up this room where Elvis is on at the MGM. "Hello," I said, "Tom Jones here." "Hey, Tommy, how are you?" "Look," I said, "I've got a pal, Jim Tarbuck. He's a very big star in England. Very, very big star." So I go in, and there we are in the front, and I couldn't believe we were watching him. He just sang 22 songs, everyone was a hit, and we left. So I go back to Caesar's Palace, where the Lord Jones is appearing. "Where have you been?" I said, "I took Pauline down the strip just to see all the lights and all that," never said a word. Well, he said, "I've got a treat for you tonight." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Elvis is doing a late show, and I've got the table." Now, this is the one I've spoke to the maitre d' about getting me out. So we now go in with the Jones party with his mum and dad, his sister, his missus, and there's the maitre d'. Well, I've got... And we got in, and he said, "Elvis has invited us to the dressing room." Well, I can't tell you what a thrill that was.
Did you ever tell Tom that you'd been...
Years and years later, I couldn't bring myself to tell him. No.
Let's take a look at how you've entertained the nation for the last 50 years.
Oh, dear.
I was out with a girlfriend in the car the other night, so I'm driving along. I said to her, "What's that knocking?" She said, "Not opportunity."
What's it going to be like today? He said, "Rough." Yes. Look at this. Your skin's leaking.
Tarby's effortless quipping...
I had my first crush. She was 14 stone.
and razor-sharp timing
Bob, Bob.
have made him a household name for over 50 years.
Got something that wards off the evil eye. Evil eye drops.
He always arrived with a tremendous amount of bounce.
This sort of fast-talking, wisecracking kid. People saw him as a rascal.
Jimmy is naughty, but he can get away with it because he has this infectious laugh.
Oh, yes, now then. Get out.
He's a cheeky chappy who got straight to the heart of the nation at the time.
He hit them with joke after joke after joke.
Tonight, we're going to delve in the archives of Tarby. And believe me, it hurts to have your archives delved into.
He is a naturally funny man.
Jimmy's other big advantage was coming from the city that in the 60s was the centre of the universe.
Being from Liverpool was the fashion. When the Beatles made it, they made it for anybody, as long as they had talent.
He had the Beatle haircut, so they call him the fifth Beatle. If he could have sung, he would have been in the Beatles, I think.
It's gonna make you weep.
Good evening. We interrupt this program for a late news flash. Martha King has been relieved.
Hey, just a minute.
He was good looking, he dressed fantastically, and he gave the younger people something to identify with.
There's Cilla Black with Jerry of Jerry and the Pacemakers. Yes. There they are playing in Cilla's landscape garden at home in Liverpool. Very nice, isn't it? Hello, hello, hello.
Jimmy's career saw him mastering a range of TV formats.
And welcome to your favourite quiz, or so they tell me, winner takes all.
But his forte was always big-scale, live entertainment.
Thank you kindly. That'd be the first to wish you happy Easter. And,
Jimmy can do live television easy. He's a natural. He's a natural performer.
All stand-up comics of our live performers, I think they're enhanced by being live. I think they feed off the audience.
let me tell you.
There was nothing more scary than live TV. 19 million people in those days used to watch the show. Jimmy wasn't quite as scared of it as most people was, because I think he just went on there, shut it out of his brain, and just worked to the audience.
By 1984, Jimmy had compared scores of live shows, so the one he presented on April the 15th seemed like any other. Heading the bill was one of his great friends.
The one and only Tommy Cooper.
Jimmy absolutely loved Tommy Cooper. Just loved everything that Tommy did.
Hello, everybody. How do you do? You and you and you and you.
The routine was going according to plan, but then Tommy collapsed. The audience and millions of viewers watching thought it was part of the act, but actually, he had suffered a heart attack, a fatal one.
We pulled him under the curtain. I was St John trained, so I started to help him.
The programme went to a commercial break, and whilst attempts were made to revive Tommy just behind the curtain, it was up to Jimmy to keep the show going.
Yes, indeed, and welcome back to Live from Her Majesty's.
Jimmy was devastated, absolutely devastated, but forever, you know, the Pro came back and introduced us and held the fort brilliantly.
They've got their own television series. I'd like you to give a big welcome to Les Dennis and Justin G. Come on!
Working from the apron of the stage, Jimmy kept the programme on air until the end of the show.
Good night and God bless all of you. Ta-ra!
I knew that, you know, after he'd done that, he was walking off into the wings to probably break down because, you know, he really loved Tommy.
Incredibly sad, difficult night for you, personally and professionally.
It's dreadful. It's just dreadful. They couldn't move him. He didn't fall over, you see. He sank down and his legs went under him and he was still upright. And they got the curtain around him. He'd only had the curtain in there for a trick he was doing. Then they tried to lay him out. Then they had to get him up onto a stretcher with wheels, you know. And they couldn't lift him. He was a very, very big guy. And he was announced dead on arrival at the hospital.
No one was sure in the moment whether it was just another of his elaborate jokes. It was always part of his act to do stuff like this. You were behind the curtain, literally. Yes. He's one of your heroes. What were you thinking? Did you think this was just some stunt of Tommy's? I
watched him go down, and David Bell was on my right, and I said, he ain't rehearsed this. But he used to do that. He would do gags and tricks that he hadn't rehearsed. And I watched, and I said, bring the commercial in. He said, what? I said, bring it in now. Now!
In that moment, is there ever any doubt that the show must go on?
Well, it was a live television show. If you pull the plug, what do you put in there? What do you put in? You see, no one knew at home he died.
Right. I mean,
I promise you.
That's what I mean about how difficult the situation was for everyone. But for you, you're the guy that has to carry on. I mean, you know, at one stage, your manager, Peter, who's here now, Peter Pritchard, was there trying to revive him. Behind the curtain. I mean, a more extraordinary scene to be unfurling on live television.
There was about 8 people around him. It was just chaos and that. And Peter, he did it for me. He said, he's OK. I said, oh, he's all right? He said, yeah. And that's when I went on and brought Les and Dustin on. And then they said he was dead on arrival.
When did you hear that?
As I came off after the finale, because everybody wanted to know how he was. It was awful. See a hero and someone I loved him.
Liverpool was a hotbed of talent in the 60s.
Yeah.
And you knew a few other Scousers who didn't do badly with themselves. There's an extraordinary picture, which I'm about to show you. Now.
That is John Winston Lennon, there. That is Jimmy Tarbuck, there.
You're the one punching.
Yes.
George Harrison was also at the school.
At the school, but two down.
But you and John Lennon actually sat like a couple of seats away.
Well, yes. That was at Dovedale Road, and then we went our ways, and you wouldn't have thought that you'd get him, who became one of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah.
Bar none.
Oh, yeah.
And Soppy there, me, that...
Amazing.
I've done all right.
And what was he like, John Lennon, as a young boy?
Well, like any kid. Had a few fights, played a bit of football, did this. Always quick-witted.
Did you stay close with him?
Well, him particularly, I got on very well. Richie Starkey, Ringo, good lad. Paul, Mr. Show Business, and George was very, very quiet. But Lennon had a dreadful trick. like when we were all in London and all made it, all had a crack at the big time, you'd go to a do with him, and this is dreadful what I'm going to tell you, and I nod off quite easily. I mean, if I lose interest in a thing, I just nod off, and... He would slip a drop of speed in your drink. Now, you might know what speed is, ladies and gentlemen, but it does liven you. And he did that to me once. God,
what effect did it have on you?
Well, I never slept for 3 days. I thought I was Sterling Moss. And then one night at a party, he did a terrible thing. You know the lighters you fill with petrol? Mm. This fella had a pet cat. He sticks the petrol in the milk. The cat drinks it, and the cat went berserk. Up the curtain, down the curtain, and just dropped.
No, dead?
No, he ran out of petrol.
Gotcha! Damn it! Damn it!
Oh, dear, dear. It's the first time since becoming famous that I couldn't pick a phone and go, "Hi, Jimmy Tarbuck's here. Make my mum better, will you?"
Now, you were born James Joseph Tarbuck
Yes.
in Liverpool in 1940. Your mum, Fanny, was a dancer. Your dad, Fred, was a bookmaker. You were the youngest of 4 siblings. Very sadly, you had an elder brother, Freddie, who died when he was just 18 months old, and you were, I think, a very special arrival for your parents because of that.
Well, I would have thought so. This little boy died from pneumonia, so all the love that might have been showered upon him came my way.
You've called your father in the past an alehouse comic.
He was an alehouse comic.
What does that mean?
Well, he'd be at the bar and everyone would be laughing. He was one of them. He liked having a gag and everything.
Is that where you get the humour, do you think?
I suppose so, because he loved comics. And when I was a little boy, he took me to see Laurel and Hardy live.
When you were trying to make it as a comedian, you had a brush with the law.
I certainly did.
Involving Terry Thomas's
cigarette holder. I was 19, and I was doing the clubs. I was doing all right. And they said there was a premiere at the Odeon in Liverpool, and he was appearing, and there was a show on. And the fella at the theatre said, "I can get you on that for 5 minutes." So I go down, and he said, "What exactly do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a stand-up comic." He said, "Well, I'll do it, but I'll put you on." So the first half goes, the film's shown, comes the end, and I'm waiting. I was a kid. And he went, "We can't use you." As abrupt as that. So I had the pin, the needle, and I'm walking out, and there was this cigarette thing.
He was famous for this.
Oh, very famous. So I'll pick it up, stuck it in my car, and it said in the Echo, £2,000 cigarette holder stolen. So
because it had 40 diamonds.
It had diamonds all round it. So I give it a mate of mine. I said, "Here, sell that." Well, of course, he goes into a jeweller's in Liverpool. The police arrive, bang, bang, they're around my mother's, and I'm there. Anyway, I got a year's probation for that, and that was my first headline time in Liverpool.
Jimmy, right from the start, you were born to entertain. As the youngest child of Fred and Fanny, Jimmy was the apple of his parents' eye, and that was despite the fact that their son was a non-stop joker.
When Jimmy was little, he used to do all kinds, hide behind doors of that, or jump out on you when you weren't expecting it. Very, very scampish.
And as a teenager, it was Jimmy's sense of humour that made him a hit with the opposite sex.
Jimmy used to give all these lines to girls and that. He was a lad about town, as they say.
And young Pauline Carford, in particular, was bowled over by Jimmy's charm.
I met him one lunchtime in the cabin, and I had a dance with him, and then somebody said to me, "Oh, that's Jimmy Tarbuck." And he was always making everybody laugh. I sort of knew I was going to marry him.
After a whirlwind romance, the young sweethearts did get married. Now all Jimmy needed was a job, and he got one as a Butlins redcoat. Finally, he was being paid to entertain.
It's perfect training. And Jim would have called the bingo, hosted the knobbly knees competition, the glamorous grandmother, donkey derby day. He would have done it all.
He just had this great thing about him, and the people loved him there. They really did.
After After making his name on the variety circuit, Jimmy was chosen by TV boss Val Parnell to do Sunday night at the London Palladium.
Val Parnell said he wanted you on the Palladium. You'd cracked it.
There wasn't a show on television at that time that made somebody a household name so quickly.
He got a series very soon after that and became so popular.
You'll never believe it, he's escaped again. I'm just playing Jim.
With one rating success after another, Jimmy was becoming a star, much to the joy of his biggest fans, his mum and dad.
Like any parents, they were so proud. And they loved it. His dad used to glow when he'd be watching him.
It was great for his mum and dad to know that they had a son like him who was a big star.
In the mid-70s, Jimmy seemed to have it all, but at the height of his fame, his beloved mother, a lifelong smoker, was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
When Mum was ill, he was coming up from London all the time, every week to see her, and sat with her for hours in the hospital. He felt he couldn't do anything for her.
The night his mother died, he was devastated, absolutely devastated.
Jimmy was heartbroken. You couldn't help him in any way. He had to go in on his own, and he wasn't that type of boy. He was a happy boy, but of course in that hand it was awful, awful.
Obviously, a huge blow to you. Tell me about your mother, Jimmy.
Well, she was just a very nice lady. Like bingo. Always had a cigarette in her hand. And the hardest part was telling my dad that my sisters, our Norma's lovely, but her and my dad, a bit naive, they said she's just got a little, having a little operation. So I was right up in the car. I said to the doctor, what's to do? And they opened her up. He said, she's going to die. And so I went into Liverpool and I got plastered. I had a right skinful, I did. It's the first time since becoming famous that I couldn't pick a phone and go, hi, Jimmy Tarbuck's here. Make my mum better, will you? And so I went to the hospital and I sat in a chair with her. I said, you feeling okay? She said, yes, I'm fine. She said, Kenneth's a lovely boy, isn't he? I said, yeah, he's smashing. Nice boy. And our Norma's a lovely girl. And I thought, what is she going to say about me? She said, and you bugger. She said, you've been nothing but a heartache all the life. I said, well, where are the other two? She said, I knew they wouldn't be here, but I knew you would. And she left, and the old man put on his wreath, I'll see you soon. And he died a year later.
You've said in the past that although you loved your father, you felt you never gave him enough time.
I didn't. And it's one of the great regrets of my life, because he would say to me, how did it go last night? I said, yeah, great, they were a great audience. Were they clapping? I said, yeah, they were clapping and laughing. Great. And he'd ask me 6 times on the same evening. And, well, impatient, I'm not a patient person. Impatient, I'd say, well, it was empty, there was no laughs, they didn't clap, and they all walked out. And he'd say, oh, you can't bloody ask you anything. And I'm sorry I did that.
You got together with your wife, Pauline, at the Cavern Club.
I did.
The famous Beatles club. Was it love at first sight?
Certainly, I don't know, I can't speak for her. I was certainly attracted to her. She's a very, very attractive girl. The Cavern incident was a lunchtime. They used to have the lunchtimes, and the Beatles would be on. Jerry, then the Searchers, you know, they came in. Scylla gave the odd song, because she was the cloakroom girl. And she used to take the coats. No, I mean take them. She'd steal the bloody coats and go on.
Pauline said in the VT that she sort of knew she was going to marry you. Did you feel that as you started going out together it was inevitable, this was the woman for you?
Well, I asked her dad, could I get engaged to her?
You did it the proper way.
I mean, he near fainted. I spoke to Pauline, and those 4 magical words that everyone has used was my proposal.
Will you marry me?
No. You're not, are you?
With your straight man, haven't I?
We're going to do a tour.
You've been married 53 years.
Yep.
How have you managed to stay married and happy, do you think? What's been the secret?
I suppose drink.
When in the mid-80s, you were earning £1 million a year.
The wife's over there, and she doesn't know anything about this.
In 1963, at the age of 23, you became the youngest British comedian to land your own TV series. What a moment for you.
Tremendous. Just tremendous.
Did you quite believe it?
No. A fellow called John Scofield said, we're not giving you curtains, we're putting a wall behind you. And it clicked, it became known as Tarbuck's Wall. And that really helped. And the biggest compliment I've ever been paid over that was Billy Connolly was asked who his influences were. And he said, I was one of them.
Really?
He named 4. And I was so chuffed with that.
So I think I worked out your secret when I looked at the names of the shows that you've had on television. I'm going to read them and see if the penny starts to drop quite quickly. It's Tarbuck, Tarbuck at the Prince of Wales, Tarbuck's Back, The Jimmy Tarbuck Show, Jimmy Tarbuck's Christmas All-Stars. Are you with me here? The sort of general theme was it had to involve the word Tarbuck. Is that the secret of show business?
One noticeable exception.
Which one?
Piers Morgan Show.
With Jimmy Tarbuck?
Of course! Yeah.
When in the mid-80s, you were earning £1 million a year, which, to put it in perspective, was more than Terry Wogan, Noel Edmonds and Bruce Forsyth put together. I mean, you were in a different league of earnings to everybody else.
The wife's over there, and she doesn't know anything about this. You give the game away. Terry Wogan, who? And who else?
I knew you'd like that.
Yeah.
Terry Wogan, Noel Edmonds and Bruce Forsyth, all put together.
Too bloody true and well-deserved as well. Well, he'll go potty Bruce if he knows that.
You've met some amazing people.
Yep.
You once hung out with Frank Sinatra. Tell me about that.
I was at the swimming pool in Miami, and this guy came up, great big heavy, he said, the man wants to say hello to you.
The man?
I said, what man is that? He said, the man, Frank. I said, oh, aye. Frank who? He said, well, I was up, room, changed and down, and as you can see, I was only a kid. And it was like in a film, he just stood up, he went, how are you, Jimmy? Oh, I said, hi, Mr. Sinatra. He went, Frank. Frank, I said, this is Pauline. Hello, ma'am, sit down. And I didn't drink in those days. And he said, Mr. Sinatra, he said, I'll take a Jack Daniels on the rocks, sir. I said, I'll have a Jack Daniels on the rocks. And Sinatra went, oh, you're a Jack Daniels man, Jimmy. I said, well, yes, I am, Frank. Pauline went, well, I went, shut up.
Well, what an incredible experience.
Oh, and I drank it. Well, near choked. He roared laughing. Good luck, good luck.
As your career took off, you became one of the biggest names in show business. In the 1970s, Jimmy was rarely off our screens with his shows jammed across the schedules.
The Tarbuck Show.
Tarbuck After 10.
Live from Her Majesty's.
Tarbuck's Luck.
Tarbuck Tonight.
He was the governor.
And with fame came fortune.
There was very few people earning more than Jimmy Tarbuck at that time. He was earning top dollar.
Soon Jimmy could afford fancy clothes and flash cars.
We were buying rollers and racing down the road with them. You go, as we say, go from bread and jam to silk pyjamas. You do those kind of things.
He was kind of like a rock star. It was like working with showbiz royalty.
It sounds stupid, but he used to get mobbed. And I wanted to keep the children well away from all of that nonsense.
Pauline kept him on the straight and narrow because he can be a bit of a diva sometimes, you know. She's not interested in that rubbish. She levelled him out, and also he's terrified her anyway, so it's as simple as that.
Jimmy's profile was so high that he was even getting offers from estates.
He went over and did a show for Bob Hope, and they wanted him to stay, but he's always been quite a home bird. but he was quite happy in England. He didn't really want to go.
But at least the visits gave him a chance to meet some of his heroes, like Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, and Elvis. For once, Jimmy was speechless.
I knew Elvis very well, so I said, "Hey, Jimmy, come and say hello to Elvis." "Oh, is it okay?" I said, "Elvis, come here." So, you know, and we were like, and Jimmy said, "Wow, I didn't know what to say to him." I said, "He's one of the boys, you know, like we are."
In the 1980s, Jimmy was still the big star, having signed a 5-year deal with LWT. But although hugely popular with the mainstream, he wasn't liked by everybody.
There was a new wave of comedians who would have a go at variety comics, and particularly Jimmy.
Look, I'm not sitting at the same table as Darby, and that's that.
No, Eddie, no. We're talking about Jimmy Tarbuck. A cheeky chap from the pool. Everybody's pal. A jolly gap-toothed scouser with a twinkle in his eye and a smile for every honest Englishman.
Look, if there's one thing I hate in British entertainment more than you, it's that vast army of ex-stand-up comics who did one half-funny gag on Sunday night at the London Palladium in the middle 60s and have made a fortune doing game shows ever since.
I think Jimmy's support of Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative government probably did affect some of those new wave comedians and anger them.
And what a choice you've got. The Iron Lady, the Invisible Man, or the Odd Couple.
Jimmy was never a political humorist. He wasn't that kind of, I'm going to save the world comedian.
It was undeserved. Jimmy was the traditional variety comic, and in the 80s, for a short while, it became unfashionable. We all had to keep our heads down in the 80s.
Every generation in show business wants to upend the one that preceded it because they want to have room for themselves.
Audiences can see that it's just pure fun.
His wife called him a lousy lover. How can she be a judge in 2 minutes?
No politics, no, you know, agenda, just fun.
I always used to say, if you want to criticise him, you can if you've seen him live, but if you haven't seen him live, don't even bother, because he'll wipe the floor with most people.
When these comedians came after you and kind of ridiculing everything you stood for, the humour, the stand-up career, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're honest, was it quite hurtful at the time?
It didn't hurt me at all. I didn't give a monkey's uncle about them. You know.
Were you angry?
Funny, whenever I met them, "How are you, sir?" Ben Elton, all of them, in dressing room. "Hello, lads, all right. Still having a go." I was on Spitting Image, you showed a bit there, and I was on, and the people either side of me were Mrs. Thatcher and President of the United States, and I thought, one of the few times, I must be quite well known. If I'm in the middle of those two. It wasn't nice for the kids and all that, but I mean, it never hurt me.
In the series Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, they constantly poked fun at you as Rick Mayall's character, Richie Rich's hero. They even had a photo of you in the middle of the set. How did you feel about that? Did it give you street cred in a funny way?
I think it did. All the kids saw you on the telly, Tarby, with the young ones, and, you know, whatever they were all called. I says, "Yeah, that's me, they're the boys." And I'd say things to them, "I write that, you know. We never knew that." I said, "Oh, yes."
Rick Mayall has said since that he suffered from guilt, his words, about giving you such a battering.
Yes, he did. And he came up to me in a dressing room in this building and just said, "It's very nice to meet you." I said, "It's nice to meet you."
Have you had to adapt your stage show to move with the times? Have you had to stop doing a lot of the kind of jokes that you did in the 70s, 80s? The jokes you used to do, say, at Kenny Lynch's expense, you couldn't do those now, could you, or could you?
Well, he's not on the show with me.
Let me give you an example.
Go on.
You said to him once, last time you danced, it rained for 3 days.
Well, what is offensive about that, for God's sake?
Would you tell that joke on television now?
Of course I would. They crucified Les Dawson for mother-in-law jokes, but they're funny. The bell went, I opened the door, it was the wife's mother. She said, "I'd like to stay here." I said, "Stay there," and shut the door. That's a funny gag.
No one is ever going to get too uptight about mother-in-law jokes. The jokes that people say are no longer acceptable are those that are either racist, sexist, or homophobic.
I'll give you an example of offensiveness. This Jewish guy met his pal. If you were to say two Yids were talking to each other, I'd take great offence at that. The N-word with black people. You'd never say that. But you're trying to tell me two black guys were having a talk. Black people don't laugh. They've got wonderful sense of humour. Irish people. You know, it's how you phrase a gag, isn't it? But the Irish sense of humour, the Jewish sense of humour, the black... Humour is humour.
Has Britain become too PC?
Oh, there's certain words in it. Politically correct. And what about health and safety? What about that?
Was there a moment in the whole time that you went through this where you feared the worst, that you thought this might be it?
Friends start going around you, dear friends, and you think, well, when's my tick on the list? Is this going to do it?
When you were growing up, you had aspirations to be a footballer.
Yes.
You even played semi-professionally. You played for Brighton Hove Albion.
I did.
Briefly, we've got a picture of that. There you are. I mean, you look like Georgie Best. How good were you?
I could play a little bit.
I mean, did you ever think you could...
Yes. Went for trials and tried. You see, fantasies. I've been allowed to have fantasies.
Well, I was going to come to what I think must be the greatest moment of your life.
Go on.
This is 1988 FA Cup final. It's the pre-match celebrity game. And we have a clip of this. Watch this.
That's Frosty. That's got to be a penalty. Because I think Frosty saved the ball outside the box, did he not?
Well, that's what Terry Neal's just explaining to him, I think.
Yes, I think. Well, yes, Terry obviously had a word of advice there and is still giving him a word of advice.
Now, who's going to take this? Jimmy Tarbuck,
Tarbuck's
captain.
taking it.
And he scored.
He's fulfilled a life's ambition now then, Tarbuck.
80,000 people, Wembley Stadium, the Liverpool shirt, and you drill a penalty past David Frost. Has anything given you a better buzz than that moment?
There were twin sisters in Sydney. It's a joke, Pauline, for God's sake. Chris Quentin from Coronation Street won the penalty, 100,000. Bobby Moore was playing in our side, so the penalty... And he went, I'll take it. I said, you'll take it. 100,000 at Wembley, piss off. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience just to be on that hallowed turf.
You're a total golf nut, too.
Yes.
What do you play off these days, handicap-wise?
Well, sorry, Bob. I don't.
Do you not reveal it for gambling purposes?
Oh, we're having a bet? Oh, I'd love that.
I just heard you're a bit of a bandit, you know.
I am. Now, what do you play off?
18.
You've got a game.
Excellent.
All right.
I'd enjoy that.
You like?
Does Forsyth still play?
He does.
Let's get him out.
The old boy, would you play?
Yeah, of course.
I'll get the old gentleman out then. And another.
Corbett?
He doesn't play as much, the little wizard.
Another suggestion?
Well, I played 9 holes with him last week. He fell in 4.
Jimmy, you spent your life in the spotlight, and you're still playing it for laughs. After more than 50 years in showbiz, Jimmy's enjoying a more relaxed lifestyle. But when he's out on the golf course, he likes to keep those Tarby gags coming.
Well, next, we've got a great surprise for you. A young man who's been entertaining audience for years, and he's a real big favourite of mine. It's me. So...
He's always been booked. He's always been working. He takes it a little easier now, as we all do. But he's still a big attraction.
What a memory, all our yesterdays.
He's very, very naturally funny person. So it's still with him as far as I'm concerned.
As well as comedy, he's diversified into acting, alongside daughter Lisa and the drama Linda Green, playing her uncle.
I've got a bit of a voice, you know.
Have you?
I was famous for entertaining the lads back at the Garrison.
Were you?
When he comes back and does something, you think, oh yeah, he's still so good. And Jimmy has that quality.
Jimmy makes sure there's plenty of time to follow his main love of sport. His passions for Liverpool Football Club and horse racing are only eclipsed by his obsession with golf.
He is golf potty. Absolutely golf potty. I've never known anybody as potty about it. He'd play every single day.
Hello. Did you get that? Did you get that?
If he's your opponent, he's deadly.
You're not playing off 15 in this? I thought we were having a bet. You banned it.
He's very competitive, very competitive.
Over the years, Jimmy's used his love of the game to raise millions of pounds in charity tournaments, work which was recognised in 1992 with an OBE.
Recently, his big interest is in the Refugio over in Portugal, which is for orphans of drug addicts. And some of these kids are born with AIDS, and, you know, it's tragic. He's very willing to always give a bit back, and that's great.
In 2006, Jimmy was back on Peak Time TV and Strictly Come Dancing.
He was about 62 at the time and chubby and all that, and he's trying to lift up birds and do the lambada. I don't think he should have done it in the first place. I mean, I'm a much better dancer than he is, and I wouldn't have done it.
Flavia, couldn't have had a better partner. Flavia, oh, what a darling lady.
First week I danced with Jimmy, we had the waltz, which was fine.
He was rehearsing 6 hours a day.
But in the second week, while training for the Argentinian tango, Jimmy began to feel ill and left early.
He came home and he said, God, my heart's going. It's pounding a bit.
He'd had a sort of an attack of some sort, and they'd rushed him to hospital.
Heart specialists found that Jimmy had blocked arteries and needed surgery. He had to pull out of the show.
Obviously, we were all really worried about him.
The positive you take from that is that it was identified and dealt with.
It was a frightening moment, but at the same time, it was a huge relief because it explained a lot of things he'd been feeling, a lot of things he'd been going through. He's had the surgery now.
He could have had a heart attack if he'd have been doing one of these strenuous dances.
Thank God he pulled through it, because if it had gone any further, it might have got even worse.
And looking back on it, do you think that it was dancing with Flavia that caused the heart problem?
She is just a delightful girl. She's not had the right partner. Certainly in me, she will win that. She is terrific. But I think it saved my life.
I mean, it's a very gruelling show. People don't realise just how much you put in. I was going to ask you, do you think if you hadn't done it, this could have come out in a much more serious way?
But of course, absolutely I do. I mean, what they do with you, just put your arms out like that, I'm being serious, they stick a snooker cue up your sleeve and across there, and you're like a scarecrow. Then move your hands, and they said, that's where we want you. Then they put coins in your hands when you're on the girl's back so you don't let go, and they teach you. Well, it was great with the waltz. Then we did a jive, and I can always jive. Then came this Argentinian tango, and I just, well, that's been said. And I was rushed in, and I had, they said, look, you're going to have a bypass, or we can put stents in tonight. I said, put the stents in. Well, anyway, thank God, I was fine. And I went down to Portugal to recoup, and I was getting the papers, and there was one of these cards, and it had a guy in the water with a lady on top of him with their boobs bare, great boobs, and he's in the surf like this. So I sent it to the hospital, and I said, whatever in these stents, they're bloody marvellous.
Was there a moment in the whole time that you went through this where you feared the worst, that you thought this might be it?
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, you don't want anything to end. And then friends start going around you, dear friends. And you think, well, when's my tick on the list? Is this going to do it?
When you look back on your incredible life, I guess in moments like that, you start to look back on your life. What's been the greatest moment of your life, outside of marriage and children?
Oh, it'd have to be the first night on the Palladium, because that was the show that could turn you into an overnight star. I'll give you a few examples. Val Doonican, Engelbert Humperdinck, Bruce, so many, certainly Jimmy Tarbuck. And that just changed my life. And I will be eternally grateful for that night, I promise you, Piers. There's nothing, no other experience like it have I had.
And God forbid, if we suddenly both discovered that we had 5 minutes left to live, or say 2 minutes, just enough time for you to tell one joke before we both leave this planet, which one would you choose?
Well, first of all, if it was only, say, 2 minutes, right, I'll tell you the truth, what I'd do, I'd make love to Pauline, and there'd be a minute over to boil an egg. Now,
ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Tarbuck.
Thank you.
Well, Soccer Aid kicks off on Sunday here on ITV1, live from 6. So how do the Stars reckon they'll get on? Catch the latest from Robbie Williams at the training ground at 10:35 tonight, after news at 10.
Jimmy Tarbuck through the 70s and 80s was the undisputed king of light entertainment on British television.
I don't know where he's going tonight.
His wife called him a lousy lover. How can she be a judge in 2 minutes?
Everyone has a skeleton or two in the cupboard, and I'm sure Jimmy Tarbuck has.
There's some incredible facts about Jimmy Tarbuck. He went to school with John Lennon.
Tommy Cooper!
He was there when Tommy Cooper lay dying behind the curtain and had to carry on the show. Jimmy Tarbuck is great friends with Tom Jones, Bruce Forsyth.
Did you get that? Did you get that?
Ronnie Corbett, Kenny Lynch. He's hung out with Sinatra, Elvis Presley. One thing's for sure tonight, we're going to get the best name-dropping life stories has ever had.
I am so up for this interview. I am ready to go, and he doesn't know this tonight, but I'm doing it from the toilet in my dressing room. I'm so nervous. They are.
Jimmy Tarbuck.
Piers Morgan.
I don't think anyone's come out to a bigger roar than you did.
Well, I've got 48 family there.
What is it about you think that the public just instantly find endearing?
I honestly don't know. With my hand on my heart, I don't know. It's, don't get me going. It's very touching. And people say, why do you do concerts? Well, it's the drug of the laughter and the people being so nice. It really is. It's a terrific feeling. Laughter is a terrific feeling.
Jimmy, you've performed for royalty many, many times over the years. When Charles and Camilla told you they'd been taken home in a police van after that famous incident where they were ambushed by rioters, you gave them some very sound advice.
He said, it was dreadful. He said, and they took me home in a police van. I said, you didn't give your real name and address, did you? He looked a bit bemused, he went, and then he was speaking to the next people as he did the room. He went, real name and address, just like...
In the last 50 years, you've played the London Palladium over 700 times.
Yes.
How did you get asked to appear for the first time?
Well, I did a show up north called Comedy Bandbox, and it only went out in the north. And they said to Val Parnell, who was the boss of the Palladiums, there's a kid been on here, you want to see him? And he said, book him. And I was on the next weekend. I couldn't believe it. I'm on this club, it was headlines up north that I was going on. It was the Palladium. There was only BBC One and ATV. There was no other shows. And in those days, you got 20-odd million viewers. That night in '63 changed my life totally.
You got a little bit of a reputation early on, Jimmy. In fact, on that first show, you overran, apparently, by 3 minutes. At a Royal Variety Show, you've apparently turned a 6-minute slot into an 18-minute slot. There is a sense of, once you get that first laugh, there is no stopping him.
Well, what had happened, in my defence, the American comics had been on and just done whatever they wanted to do. So they came back, and I was on in front of Tom Jones, who was closing the show. They said, you've got to cut. I said, I certainly won't. I said, the Yanks have had a go. I'm going to have a go. Well, I went on, and I didn't realise I'd done so, and there was murder when I came off. You're going to get this. There was rollickings left, right and centre, and then it was time to meet the Queen. And she went, how many of these have you done now, Mr. Tarbuck? I said, 4 more than you. She said, it certainly seemed like it tonight.
Both comedians have a trademark or catchphrase. Tommy Cooper had his fez, of course. Ken Dodd, his tickling stick. You've always had the gap in your teeth.
Oh, yes.
This happened when you were like 6 or 7 at a swimming bars or something, right?
Well, there was a gap, because my mum had that, but I came up on the, you know, the